What is going on YouTube? Kevin here from TGITechday with a first impressions video of iOS 7. That's right, even though today for me is Thursday, I actually got my hands on a beta version of iOS 7, loaded it onto my iPhone 4S, and now I'm going to give you guys a first impressions video of what it's like to experience iOS 7 a lot better in depth than what Apple can provide for you through the keynote or through their website. So I'm just going to go through this kind of step by step the things I noticed at first, my first impressions, the things that kind of mattered to me most. And you guys might find this a little bit noteworthy to watch because this is what you can expect when you actually get iOS 7 on your phone or your tablet or your iPod in the fall. So the first thing you'll notice is obviously the lock screen. This is the one thing that this is the first shot of the iPhone that Apple actually kind of exposed to the world in their keynote. And the thing that you notice is, besides the fact that the wallpaper is actually dynamic and it kind of moves, you'll notice that there's no slide to unlock slider, which I found kind of interesting. Instead, you just kind of slide the whole screen over, and it's kind of just this overlay. The background stays the same, but the overlay just kind of goes away. And then when you unlock the phone, you're presented with your home screen as normal. But let's go back to the lock screen. I want to talk about some things. You notice that it fades in and fades out, which is a not very nice aesthetic transition. Normally it would just snap on, snap off, but now they've added a nice fade in, fade out, which is just something to note. The time is no longer in a box, which I really like. It makes it seem like a very nice, continuous and very sleek looking lock screen. The time is printed bigger so you can see it easier, and that's pretty much all there is about the lock screen. Of course, the camera button still is here so you can slide up to access your camera. I'm not going to do that at the moment, but you guys can see that this is what the lock screen looks like. Now, we can still slide to unlock, but again, there's no slider. If you had a password, you would see a keypad right here, and then you would have to punch in your passcode to access your phone, but I don't have one for demonstration purposes of this video. Now, you guys will notice that there is, again, a transition that has been added. Instead of having all the apps kind of along the edge and then converging to the center of your home screen, the apps now kind of fall into place with a 3D effect, which is very cool again. Aside from the obvious icons that look like they were advertised to a very young child and very cartoonish, there's some other things I noted. The one thing was actually the menu bar, interestingly enough. Now let's open an app so you can see this. Let's open Stocks, which is a darker app. I noticed this, I don't know if you guys can notice this on camera, but the menu bar is a lot smaller than what it used to be. Now, it might just be my eyes thinking that it's a lot, but for me, it was a noticeable difference. Everything in the menu bar has shrunk a few pixels. All the lines on it, all the print, the text, the font, everything has slimmed down by a few pixels. Like, I noticed this when I first looked at the orientation lock, and I'll try to get a closer up shot of this if I can possible, or maybe I'll just take a screenshot for you guys and show it to you. But the lock screen, or not the lock screen, the menu bar has a lot thinner stuff, which means you can cram a lot more icons into the top here. I used to have icons going all across the top of this menu bar up until it almost hit the time. And now that the menu bar arms have thinned out a little bit, it's a little bit nicer and a little bit sleeker. So there's something that I noted personally. Again, the transition from place to place, the apps zoom in a lot nicer. You go to your home screen, the transition is a lot nicer. All these things, these graphical interface things, all these things are just kind of bells and whistles that kind of make the iOS just run a little bit smoother. Not actually smooth, but just make the experience a little bit smoother. I did notice, because of the heavy like graphical stuff and transitions, I did notice that my phone is a little bit laggy when opening apps and stuff like that. So there's a noticeable delay, at least for me. It doesn't seem like it here because it's working pretty well. But last night when I loaded this onto my phone, the lag was very noticeable, and I didn't really like it at all. But hopefully with future versions and releases of this beta of iOS 7, the speed will increase. And it might be due to the fact that I'm running on an iPhone 4S and not the iPhone 5, which is the latest powerhouse in the mobile, in Apple's mobile arsenal. So first impressions are so far alright. There's nothing mind-blowing yet, but another cool thing I noticed was Notification Center. There is this Today tab which shows your appointments and things like that, as well as Tomorrow tab, which is really nice and convenient. There is an All Notifications tab at the top, so you can see your various notifications, and you can see your missed notifications or your missed calls or things like that. And again, that's accessible from anywhere in the iOS. Now, another thing that's also accessible anywhere in the iOS is this. This is Control Center, and this is by far my favorite feature in iOS 7. Now, before iOS 7, I always jailbroke my phone. I always waited until there was a jailbreakable version of my phone before I would upgrade it. So I was always stuck a few versions behind on the iOS because I was waiting for a jailbreak to happen. I pretty much no longer have to do that. I ran through my Cydia tweaks and I found that pretty much all of the tweaks that I used, and again, me personally, I'm not really a heavy user on jailbreak stuff, just convenience things, but I found that a lot of it was actually held in Control Center. So when Apple introduced this during their keynote at WWDC 2013, I was beyond ecstatic. I was like, this is the reason why I don't really have to worry about jailbreaking anymore, because most of the features I used are right here in Control Center, built in native, and they work just like they were in the jailbreak world. Now, whether Apple knew about this and knew it was a very popular tweak in the jailbreak world and wanted to implement it into their iOS, that goes beyond my scope of knowledge. But regardless, they brought in SB settings style toggles and a lot of other functions to Control Center, which again is accessible anywhere in the iOS, which is very nice. So at the top here, we have our toggles. We have airplane mode, turning Wi-Fi on, toggling Bluetooth. This is the do not disturb function that they introduced in iOS 6, and the orientation lock. Of course, down below, you also have a brightness slider, which is again something I usually jailbroke for because I did have to vary my brightness a lot, and it was really annoying to have to go through the settings and go through the stuff like that just to access something that I'd just be turning up or down my brightness. We also have a much nicer and larger music player. Music controls is no longer tucked away within the confines of the multitasking tray. This is a very nice presentable way, and then when you do play music, it shows pretty much everything you want to know. It shows the album, the song title, and the artist all together. You no longer have just the song, so that's really nice. You also have volume controls beneath it as always, and you have these other, they're not really toggles, but they kind of are in a way. We have a flashlight here, which is very convenient. You can turn that on and off, and it turns on the LED flash on your device. If you have one, of course, that's probably not available on the iPad. You have quick access to your clock or timer, so if you want to quickly set a timer, you can do that, or as always, you could tell Siri to do that if you wanted to. You have quick access to a calculator, which is really nice, and my favorite one below here is the camera. Now, the camera is a little bit slower than I'd like it to be anyway. It's still relatively fast. It's much faster than quitting out of whatever app you're in and then going to find your camera app, but it's still a little bit laggy and not as impressive as I thought it was going to be. Now, I did mention before that this did feel a little bit laggy on my phone, so hopefully in future versions of iOS 7, Apple will take care of that and fix the speed problem, especially considering that the iPhone 4S is only last generation iPhone, and it's still kind of laggy. So overall, this was my first general impressions of iOS 7. I will be doing some more in the future. One last thing I almost forgot to mention is that there's no Spotlight search. Now, I didn't really use Spotlight search a lot even when I had it there, and it's not gone from iOS, it's just hidden in a different spot. And I didn't really notice this until someone actually mentioned it to me and actually read it on a forum. I kind of discovered this because normally when I was on my home screen, I just kind of fiddle around and I would most likely just push the home button just for fun and see it switch back and forth between the Spotlight search and the main home screen. You'll notice that even though I'm pressing the home button, it's no longer switching over to the Spotlight search. And the reason is because it's no longer tucked away to the side of the home screen, but it's more because it's tucked above the home screen. How about them apples? So instead of swiping over and then accessing Spotlight, you just swipe down from any part of your home screen, whether it's your primary one or your secondary, tertiary, quaternary, whatever number home screen you're on, you can just pull down and access the Spotlight search. Now, while we have this keyboard up, there's also one other thing I want to mention. I did feel like the keyboard was not laggy, but I felt like I had to be very deliberate about when I type things. Now, most of you guys, or some of you guys, should know that when you update your new phone and completely restore it, which is pretty much what I did to load iOS 7 onto my phone, it erases pretty much all of your settings, including your dictionary and the way that you type. Apple introduced this kind of smart keyboard when they first introduced iPhone that kind of learned your typing behaviors so that it can do autocorrect a lot better. And I felt like I had to kind of restart over again, even though I did type some words I commonly use that aren't normally in a dictionary, like proper nouns, and it did autocorrect those. So I don't think it completely threw out my customized learned behavior of my typing, but I felt like I had to be a lot more deliberate because I felt like the keys were a lot more sensitive and they didn't really sense my fingers very well. I don't know if that's just me or if that's just the new keyboard and the way that it works, but for me, I felt like I had to type a lot more deliberately, and that's one thing that I kind of noticed really, a lot because I text a lot. I am on Facebook, Twitter a lot, and do a lot of things on my phone. So the typing is kind of a big deal. It is still typable, still pretty fast, but it's still something I noticed I had to be a little bit more deliberate and a little bit more careful about where I put my thumbs and my fingers when I typed on the keyboard. So this was my quick general first impressions of iOS 7. So far, they're all right. Again, they're not fantastic. Control Center is the main thing that got me, and that's the real reason why I want to load this onto my phone, because I really want this, kind of control over my phone. But, there will be more in the future, and as Apple updates their beta of iOS 7, I will be loading it onto my phone and being able to show you guys the newer features. But this again was my quick first impressions of iOS 7. These are the things I noticed the most and things that actually mattered to me most. So if you guys like this type of video and you want to see more of it in the future, in the near future, please feel free to rate, comment, and subscribe to find more in the future, and I'll see you guys in the next video.